Hello, this is Mark LaRochelle from Productive Computing. Thanks for joining us on this video. We want to talk about the features of Claris FileMaker Pro 19.6. Let's dive in. So this is what you need to know about Claris FileMaker Pro 19.6.1. These are the release notes and they're available on the Claris website. In this video, we'll be focusing on the new features and enhancements, and we won't be going over the resolved issues. So the biggest feature here, it's mentioned on top, it's the one everyone's talking about, it's called transactions. Now, to really dive deep into transactions and all the theories and the different ways you could use transactions and the different aspects that this particular feature gives us as developers would really take either several long videos or an entire course to fully exploit and understand and capture. I'll summarize this by saying you have three new script steps: open transaction, commit transaction, and revert transaction. You can think of a transaction as a form of validation. Now, validation is nothing new in FileMaker, and for the most part, the tools that we had prior to 19.6 had a limited scope of a single record. For instance, if you were attempting to enter text into a number field, validation features would prevent that from happening. Or if there was something wrong with that particular record, you could revert the entire record. Where transactions comes in is that you embed these within an entire script. That means several script steps across several records can be, in a sense, protected. You can then choose whether you want to acknowledge and admit that transaction to go forward, thereby either creating, deleting, editing records across multiple script steps, or you could revert the transaction. And in some cases, depending on the error, the transaction will be reverted for you automatically. Now, a lot of developers have already created their own system to protect multiple records so that things happen as a collective, but this makes it infinitely easier for even up-and-coming starting developers to understand. This feature is now built into the product. It's in the core of its DNA. And at the end of the day, developers who utilize transactions will have better validation options, more transactional integrity, so they can do things either as a batch or protect items where they can validate across multiple records under multiple situations all at once. We'll be exploring transactions within Productive Computing University and potentially selected videos here on YouTube. Next, we have macOS Ventura. This is the latest operating system as of this recording. FileMaker Pro fully supports this OS now. Next, we have an interesting feature called Sign In with Apple. This will allow you to use your Apple ID to sign into your FileMaker system. It has to be set up using an Apple developer account, and connections and configurations need to happen on FileMaker server. Once that's complete, however, you'll have new options for your users to log in. Just keep in mind that this particular authentication is individual-based versus group-based, and depending on your organization and how sophisticated your structure is, group-based authentication, such as working with Active Directory or Open Directory, selected OData providers, or Microsoft Azure may still be preferred. Next, we have some new functions. 3 of these functions actually support the new transactions model. We have a get transaction open state. Then we have the last external error detail, which is specific for transactions. Then piggybacking on that, you have the get last error location. We won't be going into the details of this. To do so, to understand it would go beyond the scope of this video. Next, we have a new function called Get Current Time UTC Microseconds. Now, a microsecond is 1/1,000,000th of a second, whereas a millisecond is 1,000th of a second. Now, at the end of the day, even though it says UTC, it's not using any kind of internet-based clock to get these really, really small increments. It uses your computer's clock to get the small increments. There's no other way to do it. This is not something you could feasibly do over the internet, at least not here in 2023. But it does convert those seconds against the universal time clock so that it's calibrated correctly relative to the time. Using a feature like this allows you to make your own log and record things at a very microscopic level against the user's computer clock, yet at the same time keeps it calibrated based on a universal time versus their local time. Next, we have some updated libraries. These are some internal components and support libraries that support the product. Next is a file option called Show Sign-In Fields, even when OAuth or ADFS is enabled. Let me quickly show you that. Sometimes these items are a little better to visualize firsthand. I have a test file here. I'll go under File, File Options. Then this first option under Open, you have this default value now where show sign-in fields, even when OAuth or ADFS is enabled, that's automatically checked on every new file. I'll leave Claris FileMaker here up on the left side so we can continue down this list and look at anything firsthand as it comes up. Next, we have context menus for interactive container fields can now be disabled in the Inspectors tab. That is worth having a look. I'm going to go into layout mode here and also go into define database, and I'll create a container field like so, and I'll expand it a little bit. Select the container field, select on this data tab here, and I'm going to make this an interactive type container, but I won't use this new option called disable context menu. I'll go back to browse mode and I'll right click. Notice I have a contextual menu here, by the way, and I'll insert a PDF. I happen to have here a PDF of an entire developer's guide for the FM Books connector. All right, now once that PDF is in here, I can right click and the user can now interact with this particular document. They can zoom in, they can zoom out, they can choose how the pages are orchestrated, they can flip to the next page, they can scroll up and down. Now, sometimes developers want to hide this from the user just to prevent additional options that are otherwise not something they want to offer. As an example, they may not want this to be opened in preview because now I've essentially taken this guide out of FileMaker and I'm using it directly. So I'll go back to layout mode, select on the container field, and now select disable context menu, go back to browse mode, right click, and there is no such thing as a right click. I cannot right click to save my life here. I can still scroll up and down, but there's nothing I can do to either export the document or display the document or interact with it or zoom to it at all. So this is a good thing, I think, giving developers full flexibility whether they want to show that context menu or not. Now, if I create a brand new record, I can still right-click and insert the PDF. So don't get confused between this context menu when there's nothing in the container versus one that has a PDF. Two different things. In addition, I'll go one step further to say if you insert a picture, such as a PNG logo, now I can right-click and I still have access to the context menu. This applies only to PDFs or other interactive documents. It does not apply to regular pictures. So just be mindful of that little nuance there. I'll go ahead and put this a little smaller because we'll need this for something later. All right. Yes, this next feature, this is going to be interesting for those situations where a customer calls and they've got one user that's exhibiting strange behavior in FileMaker and you're not quite sure why, yet everyone else is perfectly fine and gaining access to a file that's hosted. Well, that's likely because the temporary cache files have been somehow corrupted for that user's local environment within their FileMaker cache files. So now, instead of going through elaborate processes of quitting the program and directing them to various blog articles, including one that we've written, you can now simply tell the user to go to Preferences and select this one button that says Delete Cached Temp Files. It warns you to say close all remote FileMaker files and then delete the cached temp file. So what you want to do first is close whatever file you're working with. Then do the same thing. Go to Preferences and then delete the temp files. It's warning you, you push OK, the temp files are gone. Now, it's very likely that this fixes, I'd say 8 out of 10 problems that you get when it comes to a particular user having an issue with getting connected to something. So let me open up my file again, and that is going to be a very handy feature. Okay, next we have the new option under the Tools menu, which allows us an easier, and dare I say, a much easier way to create an add-on compared to the previous way to do it. Now, this is still in preview mode. There are likely bugs in this, but what they have so far looks really promising. What I'd like to do is show you that right now. I'll add some more schema here to my file. I'll add a first name, a last name, and a full name. And that full name will be a calculation of first name and last name. Okay, and I'll make it a text result. And what I'd like to do is just have a combined name there. Okay, so I've got my fields here. Let me move them over here to the right of the container field. And let's create a new button, just giving us something to look at. We'll call it a Hello World. And we'll have it do a single script step. show custom dialog, and we'll say your name is, and we'll do this. And let me go ahead and finish this, and I'll do the full name here. So we've got your name is, and then we'll do some input fields. We'll take the first name field, and the last name, we'll take the last name field so we can change it within the dialog. Okay. And let's see, I've got 2 records. Let me just go to this first record. We'll just say Sam Jones. And then in the second record, we'll say Sally Smith. And then my Hello World button, we'll just colorize that a little bit so it looks more like a button. So now we've got some basic schema, and watch how easy it is to make an add-on from this point forward. And notice that I have data here, 2 records. It's populated with various things. I have one layout called test, and all I need to do now is group these items. So I'll group them using the standard group option here. With that selected, I'll go to Tools and create an add-on. Here I can fill out the details. I'll call it test, test description, category, let's just say testing, and features, let's say container, button, custom dialog. And we'll make this optimized for desktop and mobile, and I'll click create. Now when I do that, it creates an add-on in just the right spot in our system, within our environment, and I'll hold my command key here so you can see the path. It goes from my hard drive to the user, to the library folder, application support, FileMaker extensions, add-on modules, and test. And this is my add-on. Let me go up 1 level. There it is. There's the folder for the add-on. This is the support files. This is the add-on package container. It's done all of this hard work for me. I haven't had to lift a finger. And it's put it in the right spot, which means it's already installed. Yes, it's already installed. I didn't have to move anything or do anything crazy. Now, to take advantage of this, and just to give you another example of this, I'll create a new file, and I'll call it testing final. Let me put that in the same folder as I have the other file, but that's not a requirement. I'll create fields for A, B, and C, just so we can see something different, and I'll move this to the right side of the screen over here. Now, at first blush, this file is exactly what you'd expect. It's got a single table, single layout called testing final. It's got 1 table here that I can see, 1 table occurrence under relationships. Nothing up my sleeve here, but now when I go to layout mode in this same file, I can go to add-ons and then use this button here to click new. And of course I get my standard add-ons. I get JavaScript add-ons and my tables. And now down below, I have this brand new add-on, which was just installed a moment ago. I'll click choose. Now that add-on has now been installed in this file. And I know that because I can start to see the schema. I have a new test table. If I go to that test table, I've got my container, my fields, my Hello World button. If I go under the hood here, I have the test table occurrence. Under the table view, I have this, and I have the 2 records that were created and brought over from the original file. So you can think of this as, in a sense, transplanting this entire file, or the components I selected, into this file by way of an add-on, yet while still preserving whatever schema I had in this file to begin with, which wasn't much because it was a brand new file. So there's my 2 records, 1, 2, and all of that. Here's my Hello World button, Sam Jones. So I'll just change that to Sammy Jones, push OK. There it is, the button works. And this gives us a whole new way of building systems if we want to templatize or if we want to distribute something fairly complex as an add-on and use that in an existing system without tampering with the existing schema. This is the way to do it. So that wraps up the new features available in Claris FileMaker Pro. There are addressed issues here for both Windows, Macintosh, and combination of Windows and Macintosh. Quite a bit of bug fixes here, which I like to see. So obviously the biggest takeaway for this particular update is the inclusion of transactions. So I encourage you to take a closer look at transactions. You can start with the Claris FileMaker help file. It'll describe each one of these in brief detail. Then I recommend you start with creating a simple file and a simple script that includes transactions. Learn how to create a transaction that's successful all the way through. Learn how to revert a transaction using your own defined workflow. For instance, if you want something to be complete all the way before letting it go through, otherwise revert the transaction, attempt that. and then look at what happens when the system discovers its own error, where you can see firsthand where it will exit the transaction and then attempt to capture the error based on these new functions here. If you get through all of that, you'll have a basic understanding of transactions, and then you can determine where and when to use these transactions within your own development environment. What I think you'll find is that this is the new and improved way to protect and enhance your user workflows and provide the best data integrity you can with the systems you build. Thanks for joining us on this video. We look forward to more and more changes here from Claris. In the meantime, consider subscribing to the channel and feel free to leave a comment with any reactions or questions you have.